When Christine Holloway and her 14-month-old daughter suddenly vanished without a trace, panic spread fast. To her friends and family, it felt like a nightmare. But as police began to investigate, they quickly realized that this was only the beginning. What started as a missing persons case would soon spiral into something far darker. Surveillance footage surfaced, forensic evidence piled up, and then came the discovery of Christine's body, hidden in plain sight. But as for her baby, Vanessa, she was still missing. At the center of it all was a man who not only became the prime suspect, but may go down as one of the most reckless, baffling, and outright foolish killers that this channel has ever covered. This includes body cam footage, several lies unraveling in real time, and clues so damning it's almost hard to believe. And so, on that note, who killed Christine Holloway? Why? And what happened to her daughter?
We know where Christine is.
You know where Christine is?
Yes.
Oh, you guys found her?
Yes.
Well, you want to hold the baby?
Christine's dead.
Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at the case of Christine Holloway, a story so twisted, frustrating, and utterly unforgettable. Before we begin, I post true crime, strange, and chilling stories on a weekly basis here, so if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. And now, with that out the way, please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case of Christine Holloway. It was just after 1 PM on Monday, December the 2nd, 2019, when officers arrived at the Holloway residence in Ansonia, Connecticut. A welfare check had been requested because Christine Holloway hadn't been heard from in a while, and with these hours stretching into days, the silence was beginning to worry those who knew her. As you can see in this body cam footage, the air outside was bitterly cold. Snow had begun to settle, blanketing the ground and rooftops in a soft white coat. There was one detail that stood out to the reporting officers, that being there were no footprints leading up to the front door. Officers knocked, first on the door and then on the windows, but no sound responded and nothing moved inside. Strangely, they noticed a rear window slightly ajar, which was a troubling sign here, especially considering Christine lived there with her 1-year-old daughter Vanessa. An open window was not a good sign in temperatures like this. Fearing the worst, police forced entry into the home, breaking the door frame and the door in the process. It was a tough call to make, of course, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Making their way inside, the house was eerily quiet, and the air stood still and thick with tension. It appeared that the kitchen was spotless, almost too clean for a young family. Nearby, the officers noticed that the baby's crib was empty, suggesting that she was not inside the property. And likewise, the main bedroom, half sealed off behind a wardrobe, was still uncold. Officers assumed that nobody was home, but then, as one of the officers approached the bathroom, he called out in horror. A candle sat by the door, flickering low, as if it had been burning for hours, and what both officers found next would shake even the most seasoned of investigators.
Oh shit! What? Oh fuck, dude! What? Holy shit! Get the DB here. Holy fuck! Okay. Find it. Back out. No, clear the room. Clear the house. 430 D2, I'm gonna need you here.
Lying inside the bathtub was the body of Christine Holloway. It appeared that she had been beaten so badly that her brain was actually beside her body, and her hands were covered in dried blood. The scene was beyond horrifying, and quite evidently, she had been bludgeoned to a severe degree. But the most chilling detail out of all of this is that Vanessa was still missing. What followed was a wave of fear and heartbreak throughout the many streets of Connecticut. A mother had been found murdered in her own home, and her daughter had now officially vanished. The community was quite understandably devastated, and basically everyone tried to chip in to help not only try and find Vanessa, but piece together the missing parts of this story. But of course, at least to begin with, all they could do was mourn. Candlelight vigils were held, and posters of Vanessa's little face were taped to telephone poles and storefront windows. Police worked around the clock, and volunteers searched nearby woodlands and waterways in desperate search for her. But still, nobody could find the 14-month-old girl.
We've also learned that the woman found dead in the home Vanessa should have been with was her mother.
Yeah, Fox 61's Gabby Molina joins us now live from Ansonia with the latest. I guess you've got a family member with you, Gabby.
Tim, Margot, yes, right now what's happening right now in Ansonia is family members and friends and members of the community are handing out these flyers with Vanessa's picture on them, 4 pictures of Vanessa, all trying to find her, trying to spread the word here. We have not seen these pictures yet, so take a good look. There are some really, really clear photos of her face. She has brown hair and brown eyes, and that's right, family members have met here in Ansonia to spread the word about this, and I'm joined right now by Vanessa's cousin, Joshua. Joshua, tell us a little bit about what has been going through the family's mind these past few days.
It's very hard on my grandparents, and I could only imagine the other side of the family. We just want her home at any means necessary. We just want her home safe, healthy. I mean, Christmas is coming. Like, you know, she got to have her second Christmas, you know what I mean? And it's cold out here. And it's so much things going on in the world, and we would never think it would happen to your own.
Thank you so much, Joshua. And he is joined here by a couple of family members as well. I want to give you a look. They are standing at the edge of the street. Any car that stops by, they're walking over and handing flyers. They brought their own flyers. If we take a look over here, people are handing out flyers to just any car that comes by, hoping to spread the word to bring Vanessa home safely.
Despite the community's best efforts here, no sign of Vanessa was ever found. But then, officers finally experienced a break, not on Vanessa's disappearance, but her mother's murder instead. Tucked away in the corner of a nearby street, a security camera had captured a vehicle roaming the streets around the time of her death. It wasn't crystal clear who this was, but it was enough to warrant a second look, and also enough to suggest that this was not a random drive-by. Officers needed more time to look into this deeper, and over the following days, what they found was a treasure trove of evidence. Now, we'll take a close look into this footage in a short while, but it is worth noting here that this was the first real clue towards solving this case. To make things even more unsettling, it was observed that Christine's boyfriend, who also just so happened to be the father of Vanessa, was not only alive and well, but also now living in his parents' house nearby. Naturally, that put him straight into the spotlight, and maybe they were right on the money too. And so, with that said, let's look into the complicated lives of Christine and Jose. Before tragedy struck, Christine Holloway lived a life full of love, warmth, and kindness. At 43 years old, she was a beloved daughter, sister, and friend. But perhaps most importantly, she was the devoted mother of her only child, Vanessa Morales. It is clear to everyone who knew her that Christine and Vanessa were absolutely inseparable. To Christine, a mum was not just a responsibility. If anything, it wasn't at all to her. Vanessa was her entire world. Growing up nearby in Bridgeport, Connecticut, Christine was the eldest of 5 siblings, which of course in turn would help her naturally grow into a nurturing and caring person, even from a young age. Her heart was just as big as her smile, and she always looked after her younger brothers and sisters. Alongside her age, it was no surprise that her compassion made her the first in her family to earn a college degree, that being a bachelor's in psychology. It is nice to hear that Christine did not chase glamour or status. Instead, she dedicated her career to something that she truly believed in, and that was working with children. She was a daycare educator and was especially fond of caring for babies. And whether at work or at home or in her community, Christine was the kind of person who would do anything for anyone. She was a proud parishioner of St. Andrew's Church in Bridgeport, an active member of the Columbiates, and a cornerstone of her family. Her days were often filled with simple joys like helping her nephew with schoolwork, doing puzzles with her niece, and spending time with her brothers, parents, and extended family. family, and you could say that she was a real homegirl at heart. Moving on to someone who was unfortunately very important in her life, it was through her community that Christine would first cross paths with a man named Jose Morales. Over time, the two seemed to grow closer, before eventually finding themselves entangled in a relationship. And then, months later, it turned out that Christine was pregnant with his child. Now, at first, the relationship did seem stable enough. They were not married, but they did share responsibility of raising Vanessa. Friends say that Christine was extremely excited to become a mother, and despite the relationship having its challenges, as many do, she was deeply devoted to giving her daughter a safe and loving home. Focusing on Jose for a while, before his life intertwined with Christine, he seemed to live a life that was, in many ways, under the radar. After moving from Puerto Rico to the US in 1989, he grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. He was born on November the 12th, 1976, and as far as we can tell, his early years did seem to be rather unremarkable, just like his academic milestones and his career. In contrast to Christine, Jose was a man with many rough edges, someone who lived a quieter and more troubled existence, and someone who, you could argue, did not suit Christine. And I'm just going to throw it out there, but maybe didn't deserve her either. Moving into his adulthood, Jose had several small brushes with the law, including charges related to assault and breach of peace. Of course, this did suggest that he possessed a temper and a poor ability to keep himself under control, not the best characteristics to have as a boyfriend or as a father. People who knew him described Jose as someone who could be charismatic, but also volatile when pushed. Working in utilities, he wasn't known for having a steady career path or strong community ties. But regardless, Jose did eventually cross paths with Christine, a woman whose life had been built on patience, kindness, and stability. Quite understandably, he was likely drawn to her for her nurturing and loving demeanor. And Christine, well, she probably liked the idea of saving a man in need. Their relationship would eventually bring Vanessa into the world. However, as time slowly moved on, tensions between the two began to surface. It appeared that arguments became more frequent, and there were rumors of jealousy and controlling behavior from Jose's side too. But Christine was a real peacemaker, and she tried to maintain it for the entire family. Now, Jose had a long-standing issue with drugs, and that alone did not do him any favors. Not as a boyfriend or as a father. Christine put up with more than most would. I mean, it was obvious that she loved him, maybe even too much. But those closest to her, they could see it all over her face. She was clearly waiting for a version of him that, sadly, may never come. To add to her kind demeanor, Christine was also loyal to a fault, and the messages that she sent to Jose painted the picture of a woman who always kept loving, hoping, and forgiving. But behind the hope was exhaustion, and as time went on, those cracks in the relationship grew wider, and all of those around Christine became aware of it. Her friends and family were, quite honestly, worried for her safety. And then, on December the 1st, 2019, Christine quite literally vanished and stopped responding to all messages. Meanwhile, police began a painfully familiar process and began talking to the partner. Jose became the first person they questioned and the last person they knew saw Christine. And let's just say, things did not go well for him. From the very moment that Jose stepped into the interrogation room, his energy seemed off. He slouched in the chair, had his arms crossed, and barely made any eye contact with the detectives. It wasn't the posture of a grieving partner. Instead, he was defensive and guarded, and at times, he almost looked bored too. And other times, he even seemed frustrated, like he was the one being wronged.
Even though the door's kind of closed, I mean, you're free to leave. We brought you here to talk to you. I understand you're...
I'm free to leave. Where am I gonna walk all the way home?
No, we'll give you a ride. I'm just saying you're not held captive here. I'm not like... You're
So
not
why what I came here for?
to talk to you.
About what?
We're trying to find Christine and your kid.
All right, that's exactly what I've been trying to call her too.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So
We're on the same page.
okay, good. I'd rather have it that way. When's the last time you talked to her?
I talked to her, I think it was Monday morning when she was going to work.
So that was yesterday morning, Monday.
Yeah.
About what time?
Early in the morning.
Okay, so that was talking on the phone or in person?
On the phone.
On the phone.
Jose claimed that the last time he spoke to Christine was one day prior. Apparently, she seemed to be rushed and didn't want to be on the phone, and that's why it only lasted for a minute. He also claimed to have last seen Vanessa over Thanksgiving, when they apparently slept over his parents' house.
Did you stay over there this weekend?
No.
You didn't stay over there this weekend?
No.
Do you normally stay over there during the weekend?
Sometimes I do, yeah. Not normally, but sometimes I stay over.
All right. So when's the last time you saw her in person?
Friday.
Throughout the investigation, Jose desperately tried to claim that he and Christine were not actually that close. And rather than discuss how important she was to him, he seemed to be trying to detach himself from her.
We are boyfriend, girlfriend.
You guys are.
Yeah, but we're not that close either. Because she got her own place, she do her own life, she got her own apartment. When she got this apartment over here, she asked me if I can help her out.
Christine, your only girlfriend? Or you have other girlfriends? Does she have other boyfriends?
We're not that close.
Right.
It's like, we have a baby.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like she my girlfriend. We say that, we use that word very lightly.
Yeah.
But we have a baby together. That it happened, so I guess I'm assuming a little bit of responsibility by helping her out a little bit.
So where did you stay over the weekend?
I stayed with my friend Hector.
Hector.
He lives in East Haven.
You stayed. What's Hector's last name?
I don't know.
What last name? You know where he lives in East Haven? Does he know you're Christine? Or he has no idea?
Christine.
So he has no idea who Christine is?
No. He knows I got a girlfriend, that's it.
I mean, do you have any idea where she could be?
No.
Zero. No idea where a 1-year-old would be.
Vanessa?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, Christine is an adult, so I mean, I'm more concerned
Well,
about it.
Christine is with Vanessa. I figured.
Okay. I'm saying an adult's an adult. They can come and go and do whatever they want. But
Yeah.
a 1-year-old's at the mercy of whoever's with them.
Yeah.
When detectives asked him about his whereabouts over the weekend Christine was killed, he would only seem to offer up rather vague answers.
So were you at the house at all this weekend? Her house, Christine's?
Not the weekend.
You didn't go there to pick anything up, drop anything off?
On.
In fact, he would pause very often. Sometimes so long that I can even narrate sentences like this between the officer's question and his answer.
Not sure.
When asked by officers if he could prove that he spoke to Christine the day prior by showing his call logs, Jose did agree to show them his phone, but lo and behold, it appeared that no phone call actually took place.
Can I look at like the missed calls and stuff like that on this?
There are none.
There are no missed
No,
calls?
there's nothing.
I don't know, that phone is bugged out. That phone dies out. Is it a smartphone?
Jose, when did you go to Hector's house?
Friday.
When Friday?
Friday night.
And when did you come home?
Monday.
What time, roughly?
To my mom's house?
Yeah.
To where I live at?
Yeah.
During the day, not sure.
End of day?
During the day, not sure what
During
time.
the day.
Yeah.
Your dad said you went to Christine's Friday with her. Why would he tell me that?
He said that I went to Christine.
Yes.
Friday, that's why he thought I was.
Why would you? You said you told him where you went, and if you told him you went to Hector's,
She
he
got
wouldn't
her
tell
own.
me.
She got her own car.
Right, but why would he tell me that you went to Christine's if you told him where you went?
Why would he tell? He probably assumed.
Vanessa's missing, and it's my 1-year-old daughter.
I'm worried. That's why I keep trying to call my kids.
Jose, the whole ride here, you talked about everything but her. The whole ride here, you didn't talk about a 1-year-old daughter that's missing. I don't get that.
That's my daughter.
Yeah, we want to find her.
Right.
And the only reason you're here
is to find her.
Is to help us find her.
All right, so let's find her.
So where is she?
I don't know. She's
You
with
have no
Christine.
idea. I feel like you don't want to give us any information. Your father's given us more information that you're willing. And
She's
you
with Christine.
You would know every single piece of information that your father would know.
She's with Christine. That's all I know.
Christine's a big girl. I'm not worried about Christine. I'm worried about a 1-year-old that has no control over her life. Zero. That's who I want to find.
All right.
Not 40-year-old Christine or however old she is. I'm here to find your daughter.
Okay, let's find
And like
her.
I said, I find it absolutely bizarre that the whole ride here.
So what do you think? That I have my daughter hidden somewhere?
I don't know. I'm asking you for help to find her. I don't know. You have no idea where she could be, nor did you even really talk about it on the whole ride.
So let's talk about her then.
Do you have your daughter?
This was getting extremely uncomfortable for Jose, but the most striking thing is that there was no emotion behind him. No outrage, no sadness, and no disbelief. Just pure apathy. As the hours dragged on, that lack of emotion and reaction became the loudest thing in the room, because sometimes it's not what people say or confess, it's what they can't fake. And Jose Morales, he couldn't even pretend to care. So, the story of Christine's murder was now becoming all too painfully obvious for the police. But even still, it wasn't a story that anyone wanted to believe. And look, I know I'm showing a lot of interrogation footage here, but this is one of those rare occasions where officers really don't hold back. And Jose, he was crumbling hard.
I'm going with the conversation that I'm having
Right,
at the
and half
moment.
the stuff doesn't
so
add
what,
up. Your
what you
father
want me to? What you want me to cry for my daughter? Cry for Christine? Cry?
No, you can
listen,
cry, you can laugh, you
she's
can do
not
whatever the hell
like-
you want to do.
She's Christine and her. They not that close. Not that close to them.
Yeah, you said you weren't close to Christine. You didn't care about her, but your daughter was extremely important. You said that
Well,
was...
well, I guess yeah, but my life is the kids that you met at my house. That's where I live
Okay,
at.
let's talk about them.
All right, let's talk about them.
You want to be there for them?
Yeah. So I'm going home.
Okay.
Okay. Just
How long do you think that?
keep me updated.
What happens if we never find
You
Vanessa?
will. What you mean? What happened if you never find Vanessa?
Because I don't know where they are. Jose, if I knew where they are, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. We wouldn't even be having a conversation. We wouldn't have
How come
bothered.
Steven is not here and everybody else is not here?
Because they already were here. We already had this conversation.
All right. This is crazy.
So you understood what I told you, right?
What?
That somebody saw you leaving the house today? Monday? Yes? You understand that?
He was then asked to surrender his clothes to detectives and then given a white suit to wear on his way home. And just like that, Jose was then released back into the public.
I can put the sneakers on? You really gonna have me go home like this? You the boss?
And then, of course, only one day later, officers would find Christine's body in the bathtub. From that moment onwards, the case shifted gears because this was no longer a missing persons report. Instead, it was a full-blown homicide investigation. And all of a sudden, all eyes were on Jose because not only had his girlfriend now officially been murdered, but his daughter was missing without her mother. No surprise, but that is precisely what made this case all the more urgent. Because this wasn't just a simple tragedy that had now finished, a child was actively missing. And just as the weight of this evidence was now becoming somewhat substantial, something else happened. Something that would propel this case to the next level. It was on December the 4th, 2019, that 2 volunteers were clearing out the clothing donation bins outside of St. Michael's Church. Now, this was only meant to be a routine job, simply sorting through bags of old clothes and then putting them in the truck. However, what they found this morning was anything but ordinary. As they unlocked one of the bins and started pulling the items out, something strange caught their attention. Among the donations was what appeared to be a diaper genie. Nothing too suspicious, after all, it's good for any child. But that was when they realized that it was covered in blood. Now, at first, the volunteers were not so sure what they were looking at, but as they kept digging, they realized it wasn't only 1 or 2 items. Instead, there appeared to be several bags all spotted in blood. They loaded the items into a van and then brought them back to the warehouse. It was only the following day, however, that they would take a closer look, and that is when they found something extremely chilling. Inside one of those bags was a woman's dress, and alongside it was a letter addressed to Christine Holloway. The name already appeared to ring a bell, and a quick Google search would tell them everything they needed to know. News reports had erupted with Christine as the woman who was recently found murdered in her own home. And so, in light of this, they called the police immediately. Now, the police were already growing quite suspicious over Jose, especially after his rather terrible performance in the interrogation room. But then, something else came through. More surveillance footage. Now, of course, building the timeline wasn't instant, but the moment that Christine had been found dead in the bathtub, officers started asking neighbors for any Nest Cam footage. And after a few days of collecting that footage, let's just say that, well, the pieces started coming together, frame by frame. And what that footage would eventually reveal was something that no one was prepared for. To begin with, forensic analysts determined that Christine was murdered sometime between the late hours of November the 30th and the early hours of December the 1st, which meant the surveillance footage that came next, it was captured after her murder. At exactly 6 AM on the morning that Christine was killed, her vehicle was caught driving down Myrtle Avenue, which is the same street where she, Jose, and Vanessa all lived. Only 5 minutes later, it was then again spotted heading south on Elm Street, meaning that with it traveling in this direction, it was leaving the home and the crime scene. Only a few minutes later, the same car shows up on Darby Avenue, driving towards St. Michael's Church. And if that name rings a bell, well, it should, because that's the exact location where the blood-covered diaper genie and her clothing were all found in the donation bin. And so, right there, we have the car, the crime scene, and the dumped evidence all linked to this driver. But the burning question here now was, who was behind the wheel? 6 minutes later, the same vehicle is seen heading back in the opposite direction, retracing its path. And while the footage did give them a good timeline, the resolution was too low to ID the driver. That was until our next surveillance camera, which was the real watershed moment. At 6:18 AM, and ignore the timestamp here, a surveillance camera from the Shell gas station on Main Street showed Christine's vehicle showing up. Not only that, but it parked right in front of the entrance. And side note, but the driver clearly did not care about the massive no parking sign here. And guess who steps out? Yup, it's Jose Morales. After walking inside, he tries to buy a pack of cigarettes, but unfortunately for him, he can't find the change, and so he walks off instead. Another camera inside would catch his face quite clearly, and there is no mistaking it. By this point, the sun's beginning to rise. Jose spends the next hour and a half driving back and forth almost aimlessly, before then eventually heading back at 6:25 via Cottage Street. He then stays at the house, that being the crime scene, until 8 AM, and then leaves again shortly after, before returning at 8:25 and then again at 1 PM. The following day, Christine's car is spotted leaving and then returning 4 separate times in the morning, that being at 4:30, 6, 7:30 and 9:30. It's safe to say that the people of Ansonia are not shy with their Nest cameras, because as you can see, there are plenty of these cameras tracing his movements. And then, only a few hours after all of that back and forth, the police show up at the front door. With all of this new information, it became quite obvious what needed to happen next. The police were desperate to speak to Jose again, and thankfully, he wasn't too hard to find. Turns out he'd gone back to his parents' home to lay low while police discovered his girlfriend's body, and when they showed up for a second time, let's just say he didn't seem too shocked. Jose told the officers that he would never hurt Christine, and especially not Vanessa. And despite his rather sluggish reactions, he would even say that he had no idea Christine was dead. At first, he claimed that he hadn't been at the house all weekend, but detectives, they knew that was a lie, and as soon as Jose clocked onto that, well, he tried to shift and change his story. And as for his parents' reaction to the news, well, you don't need me to describe it, you can see for yourself.
We know where Christine is.
You know what Christine is?
Yes.
Oh, you guys found her?
Yes.
Well, what about the baby?
Christine's dead.
No, ¿cómo va a ser? What happened to her? What happened to her? ¿Cómo va a ser?
This is the moment that officers informed the Morales family of Christine's death. You can see just how upset Jose's parents were, but meanwhile, in the background, he hardly seems emotionally moved at all.
We're looking for your son to shine a light on our situation that we're working with right now. We're investigating, so I'll let you know this, it's a homicide. We are looking for all the help we can get.
It is noted that both the officers and Jose's parents all seem to be rattled, not just by the news, but by his own reaction too. Investigators had already seen him leaving Christine's home on multiple occasions, and yet, in that room, Jose acted like he still couldn't or wouldn't face the truth.
She's at her apartment.
In her apartment? Oh my god! Oh my god!
So we can't find the car that he says she's always driving. But we know where the car is that you say that she's driving.
The new one?
Yeah. What's up?
When I asked you about her buying a new car, you said you knew nothing about
No,
it.
I know about it.
Well, why did you say you didn't know anything
I
about it?
know about it. What? She bought a car. She bought a car because.
Jose, where you was today?
Jose, we also just took your car.
The car is gone?
Yep.
I don't know. What you want me to come up with an idea, make something up?
What happened to
What you want me to
Christine?
think?
What happened
What
to
you want me to
Christine?
say? To just invent a situation?
Cornered by the facts, he suddenly seemed to shift his story. But even then, something was off. His words didn't carry the weight of someone who was genuinely shocked or grieving. Instead, he appeared to be quite defensive about the entire thing.
Obviously, something did happen.
Were they in a serious relationship?
Huh?
Were they in a serious relationship?
Yeah.
Well, he said it was.
Oh, we wasn't in a serious relationship.
They were dating. So he's gonna say you were.
I was at his house. I was at
on
with
Monday.
him. I was with him.
On Monday.
The weekend.
No, Monday.
Well, you just said you were with Hector on Monday. You said I don't remember what I was doing on Monday.
I was with Hector
The
the weekend.
What about Monday? They're asking about Monday.
And to make matters even worse for him, detectives were able to poke holes in his new version of events right there on the spot.
Do whatever you want. You leave. Well, I'm here, and you are putting up a lot of walls.
It's not that I got a lot of walls.
Yeah, but
Maybe my brain is messed up. Maybe I'm not a clear-minded person.
Okay, I can understand that. You have a lot of stress in your life?
Yeah, I have no job.
So, by now it was no surprise when Jose was officially arrested for the murder of Christine. I mean, the evidence was quite literally stacking up by the day, and his story, it didn't hold water. I mean, there was so much for officers to go on here. Surveillance footage, phone records, and his own shifting stories painted a picture that was simply too curious to ignore. But the real thing that sealed his fate was how he reacted to the information. Nevertheless, his arrest sent shockwaves through both families, and Christine's parents were absolutely heartbroken that a man she had let in was now being trialed for her murder. And as for Jose's parents, well, let's just say it was a different kind of grief. A sort of dark and morbid confusion to look at a man, their son, who they'd loved and raised for so many years, now turn into a monster. Unfortunately, it would take 5 long years for Jose's trial to begin, which is why a case that started in 2019 is only now unfolding. And by the time that moment would finally arrive, well, Jose, he had a whole new version of events. And although he admitted that, yes, he was at the property when Christine was murdered, he insisted that it was not what it looked like. According to Jose, on the night that she was murdered, he stepped outside to smoke PCP and claimed it left him foggy, off balance, and disoriented. He then claims that when he returned to the apartment, he went into the bathroom and sat down on the toilet. And that is when, through his drugged out haze, he noticed 2 masked intruders approaching the home. But with his pants down and his mind clouded, he could not react in time to stop them. Jose then claims that he reached out for Christine's phone and dialed 911. But before he could say anything, one of the intruders allegedly hit him across the face and chest, which would ultimately leave him on the floor incapacitated. It was from the floor that he then claims to have heard Christine scream. One man allegedly attacked her while the other grabbed Vanessa. Jose then watched his girlfriend get beat with a crowbar. Allegedly. He then says that the intruders fled, leaving him with Christine's body. But as for baby Vanessa, apparently she had been abducted. So, that's Jose's new story, but the problem was that his statement completely contradicted what he originally told investigators. At first, he initially claimed that he hadn't seen Christine at all that day. In fact, he said that he wasn't even at the property at all, and certainly hadn't called 911 to report 2 masked intruders. So, with him now suddenly placing himself at the crime scene in the middle of a violent break-in, and claiming to be a helpless witness rather than a suspect, well, to the prosecution, that shift wasn't just suspicious, it was entirely damning.
Mr. Morales, did you kill Christine Holloway?
No.
Mr. Morales, were you so intoxicated on a substance, PCP, or alcohol, or any other substance that you do not remember killing Christine Holloway?
I did not kill Christine Holloway.
I just want to be sure, right? We heard the 911 tape. Is there any possibility that this is a delusion that you are engaged in?
No.
Okay. And you're 100% sure of that?
I'm 100% sure that people came into the apartment.
People
yes.
came into your house and they killed.
Well, one of them did, yes.
Okay.
It is also worth noting here that the jury ended up needing more breaks than usual, largely thanks to Jose's absolute bumbling. His inconsistent testimony, constant stumbles and backtracks, and half-baked recollections made it painfully clear that he was either completely unprepared or wasn't telling the truth at all. And let's just say that in a courtroom like this, neither is a good look. Adding to the weight of evidence against him was his very own landlord, who at the time was running a small workshop in the garage beneath the property. He told the court that on the day that Christine was killed, he could hear loud, heavy thuds coming from the apartment upstairs. That did seem to stand out because, according to him, he almost never heard anything from above. And then, of course, came the forensics, the part that no one could talk their way out of. Christine's DNA was found on Jose's shoes, inside his car, and on several trash bags inside his trunk. Not only that, but his hair was found on her hands, and phone data placed him at the crime scene at the time she was murdered. Surveillance footage aside, the physical evidence would tell its own story, one that only seemed to get darker when a forensic anthropologist reconstructed fragments of Christine's skull, revealing the unmistakable signs of blunt force trauma, likely through a crowbar. The jury would only take 2.5 hours to discuss the verdict, and when they returned, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Because despite the bizarre story that Jose had told, despite the years that had passed, and despite the legal back and forth, the evidence was overwhelming. And so it is no surprise to tell you that Jose Morales was found guilty of the murder of Christine Holloway. He was also found guilty of tampering with evidence.
In docket number AAN CR20-018-6660T, and the first count of the amended information charging the defendant Jose Morales with crime of murder in violation of section 53A-54A of the Connecticut General Statutes, how do you find the defendant as to the crime of murder?
Guilty.
In docket number AAN-CR20-018-6660T, in the second count of the amended information charging the defendant, Jose Morales, with the crime of tampering with physical evidence in violation of Section 53A-155 of the Connecticut General Statutes, how do you find the defendant as to the crime of tampering with physical evidence? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
However, even with the conviction secured and so much time passing by, there was one question that still remained. Where is Vanessa? Christine's murder was simply tragic enough, but the fact that her 1-year-old daughter has been missing ever since makes this story all the more haunting. But despite the national coverage, Amber Alerts, and countless efforts, Vanessa still hasn't been found. Not a trace. And tragically, as time goes on, it looks more and more likely that not only did Jose murder his daughter, but he got away with it too. And as for Vanessa's mother, Christine Holloway was a devoted mum, a beloved daughter, and a woman who tried again and again to see the best in someone who ultimately did not deserve her. Her life was stolen far too soon, and her daughter, even still, has vanished into the unknown. And although Jose Morales may now be sitting behind bars, the story is not over. Not for Christine's family, not for the investigators still searching, and certainly not for Vanessa. And until she is found, until that final chapter is written, this case remains a haunting reminder that justice does not always mean resolution. We can only hope that one day she is found safe and well. Now that I come to think of it, Jose could be one of the dumbest killers that I've ever covered on this channel. I mean, I know technically he could have got away with disposing of his daughter's body, but everything else just screams absolute idiot. From leaving behind a mountain of evidence to showing no emotion to then changing his story mid-trial, well, he basically gave the prosecution everything they needed. I think I'll finish this video here, but before I go, I'd love to know what you think about Jose's story, and even more importantly, what do you think happened to Vanessa? Personally, I think he very likely did murder his daughter. Honestly, this is just one of those stories that leaves you absolutely haunted by the end of it. So, with that said, please share your comments down below. And before I go, I'd love to say thank you so much for watching this video and making it this far. I really do appreciate it. If you'd like to support the channel, then please remember that I do have a Patreon, or alternatively, follow me on social media, most notably my Instagram. Once again, thank you so much for spending your time with me today, folks. I really do appreciate it. I'll likely see you again in a few days, but until then, remember to look after each other, stay safe, and of course, stay curious. Thank you, and goodbye.